What's going on, guys? So today we're going to talk through everyone's favourite steroid, or the one that's always hot topic of conversation, Trenbolone. Now, there's a lot of myths in and around Trenbolone. The main one that most people would have heard is that it's 5 times stronger than testosterone, which simply is not the case. It's not true. There isn't one steroid that is stronger than testosterone, and roughly all steroids secrete muscle protein synthesis at a similar rate. The thing that differs Trenbolone to testosterone is that Trenbolone is actually less androgenic than testosterone. It is a steroidal SARM and was originally deployed within clinical practice for the androgen sensitive. Similar to all derivatives of testosterone, the main goal within clinical practice is to find something or a compound that can have clinical use that carries the anabolic properties of testosterone without the androgenic side effects that we try to avoid. So it was developed for the androgen sensitive, i.e. women, elderly and children. Now, a little bit of brief history on Trenbolone. It was originally deployed in clinical practice as a means of hormone replacement therapy in postmenopausal women. So it is deemed safe for human use. It passed the human clinical trials and was deployed into the clinical realm. It was quickly axed off due to a funding issue as opposed to a health concern issue. And obviously, as things developed, they found other means and slightly better ways of providing hormone replacement therapy without the use of Trenbolone over time. So, why is Trenbolone so interesting as a compound? Now, as I've said, all steroids will secrete roughly muscle protein synthesis at the same rate. So, when we start to consider what sort of compounds we use within our steroid cycle stack design, we then have to look at what are the other properties that this compound carries. Now, Trenbolone specifically has a very unique interaction with the glucocorticoid receptor, being so that it has a high binding affinity with the glucocorticoid receptor, which stops cortisol from binding at the receptor, which normally would turn up muscle tissue breakdown. So via this high binding affinity, Trenbolone attaches to the glucocorticoid receptor and inhibits muscle tissue breakdown via regulating the receptor. This is why it has a very plausible reason to be used within a fat loss phase. Now, in essence, that property could be applied to a growth phase as well. But more specifically, when are we going to be in a catabolic state or a hypocaloric state where muscle tissue breakdown is going to be a concern for us as enhanced athletes? Now, typically that will be in a fat loss phase when calories are on the descent, your energy is not in a surplus, it is in a large deficit, and the potential to be catabolic is high. So Trenbolone would have great plausible effect to be utilised within a fat loss phase for that interaction of inhibiting muscle tissue breakdown or reducing it. The issue we see with Trenbolone is that it is a 19-nor derivative from testosterone. One thing that screams quite loudly from the 19-nors is neurotoxicity, right? This is one of the main health concerns we see. Specifically with Trenbolone as well, it is quite neurotoxic. So the issues we see there are in long-term use and the effects of cellular damage within the brain. Now, what we then worry about within longevity is the development of things like Alzheimer's or dementia, these typical brain degenerative diseases that occur later on in life from damage to the brain over your lifespan. So for that reason, neurotoxic compounds like Trenbolone must be used with caution. Right? People often will always look at blood work and think about the heart, liver and kidney, but the brain seems to be one that's missed. Now, how we mitigate and go around avoiding this as best as possible is within dosage and also duration of exposure. Duration of exposure is one means of controlling the time exposed to these potentially neurotoxic or harmful environment, which is why it would not be a plausibly good thing to use in a growth phase. In a growth phase, you're going to be using enhancements for extended windows of time, and it would, you're not going to achieve anything largely greater from using Trenbolone in that growth phase steroid stack design as opposed to using another compound like primobolan or Mastron that doesn't carry that same weight of neurotoxicity. It's not to say that they don't carry any negatives at all, but Trenbolone, I would think you would need to use it for a long time within your stack design in growth phases. You can't really just use things acutely for 6 weeks of growing because it simply takes longer than that to gain tissue. So in the fat loss phase, you want to limit your duration of exposure to minimise these potential neurotoxic effects. The amount of Trenbolone you use will also largely affect the degree of neurotoxicity that occurs, and what we see anecdotally to drive up the necessary interaction with the glucocorticoid receptor that we are looking for, that unique property that Trenbolone carries, is somewhere between 50 and 100 milligrams per week. Anything over this is considerably overkill. You're not driving up that unique property that we're looking for to any larger degree or any more of a beneficial degree. You're just adding more stress, more potential for higher rates of neurotoxicity and the damage that comes from that. So guys, that is Trenbolone. We are specifically interested in its ability to turn down muscle tissue breakdown, potentially within a hypocaloric state or a catabolic state in a fat loss phase. But outside of that, guys, I don't see much more plausible concern to really drive it into your stack design unless you are in a fat loss state or in that environment that would dictate that. But yeah, as you can see, the myths that are floating around with Trenbolone, they just aren't true. And it's important that we understand that there is good reason to include it within a stack design. The issue, as with everything that we do, comes with the devil is in the dose, and of course your duration of exposure. So that's Trenbolone, guys. Until the next time.